Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the AMPC webinar today for Energy Efficiency Grant. We're very lucky to have Penny Prasad from the Eco Efficiency Group that's going to go through a number of grant options around the state and also give people some tips around being able to write grants. So thank you very much. We've had 44 people register today, so it's giving us a really good indication that these webinars are working for our membership. So thank you for attending. Just a couple of tips for the webinar platform today. We are using GoToMeeting. If anyone has some questions, please type your questions in the questions tab and we will send them through to Penny or to Matt Deegan to be able to answer those questions. So we're also very lucky today to have Matt Deegan, who is our Program Manager for Sustainability at AMPC, and he will be doing a little session on tips and also helping Penny throughout the presentation. This presentation will be being recorded, so you will be able to access it later at a later stage, and we'll also send out a copy of Penny's slides at the end of the presentation because there's a lot of really good, useful information for everyone. So sit back and enjoy, and thanks very much, Penny.
Thank you. Okay, well, hi everyone, and thanks Amanda and Matt for the opportunity to talk to AMPC members and stakeholders this afternoon. So we'll quickly we'll go through what energy and productivity efficiency grants and programs are available. So just a bit of an overview of what we'll cover. So I wanted to do a quick recap on energy use and opportunities in red meat processing before we kick off. I won't spend a whole lot of time on this, but I just wanted to sort of get have a think about what opportunities are there when we're talking about some of these grants. And then we'll go on to look at what federal and state government and territory grants are around, and then quickly talk to you give you a few tips and tricks on grant writing. Okay, so energy use in red meat processing. So depending on whether the plant has rendering or non-rendering, by far the big energy users are to do with the thermal energy use, so the steam and hot water production in both rendering and non-rendering, and this is followed by refrigeration systems. So in these two areas, this is where the big wins are with respect to trying to be more energy efficient, and there's a lot of opportunities in these areas. And then after that, we have the smaller fry, so looking at pumping and lighting and compressed air systems, and then processing and packaging if you have that, and conveyor systems. Sources of energy in meat processing. So this chart here it's from a study that was done in 2013. So it is a little bit getting a little bit old, I guess, but things haven't really changed all that much. So for a meat processing plant that has rendering, you're basically looking at around 50-50 with respect to the source of energy coming from electricity as opposed to the thermal energy use, so your LPG or natural gas. A plant that has rendering uses a lot more thermal energy, and so they're using a lot more LPG and natural gas in those areas. And we're seeing a lot more now with some of the larger meat processing sites that many of those are using biogas as well. And then renewable energy is on the increase as well. So energy saving opportunities. So the big wins again, so with respect to thermal energy, depending on what sort of system you have in place with boiler systems and hot water systems, you could be saving anything up to about 15% of the energy use for those systems. With refrigeration, there is often a lot of opportunity there to be improving refrigeration systems, and the savings in this area could be between 15 and 45%. Lighting is quite an easy one to get your head around, I guess, compared to the others. Putting in, say, high bay LED lighting or just any more efficient LED lighting throughout a facility, you could be saving anywhere between 20 and 50% of the energy used for lighting. And then some of the smaller scale savings, so putting in high efficiency motors, you could be saving anything up to 4%. Variable speed drives, anywhere between 25 to 40% for the energy use for running pumps and fans and those kinds of things. And then, of course, compressed air systems. So depending on the age of your compressed air system, you could be saving anything up to 10% of the running costs for that system. So energy sources. So I mentioned renewable energy before. So there's opportunity to be looking at solar PV and battery systems. And there's more grants available for that, for those kinds of systems. Admittedly, you'd probably be using solar PV for more, like your administration buildings and those kinds of things rather than the processing side, unless you have maybe a lot of area and you could be putting in quite a large scale solar system, but it's probably not that common for an on-site system. Biogas, I mentioned that as well just a moment ago. So depending on the size of the meat processing plant, there's opportunity to be getting your energy from biogas. And then cogeneration systems is another option, usually for the bigger meat processors that are using a lot of energy and can justify putting in a cogen or even a trigen system. Okay, so on to the grants that are available. So the information that I'm about to present to you is current as of today. So even in the last day or two, some of these grants have had extensions to them. I will cover mainly federal and state-based grants and programs in this list, and hopefully we've covered, we've got all the ones that are out there and we haven't missed anything. We did a bit of a comb through in the last 1 to 2 weeks. There could be some grants available through local councils or regional development agencies, and we didn't get to go through and have a look at what is available through these different authorities. So it's a good idea just to have a look around at what is on offer through local councils and regional development agencies. What else can I tell you? Some of the grants and programs that I'm about to present have cut-off dates that are coming up really soon, such as end of June or early July. We decided to leave those in because there is always the potential that they could be extended, and often it's the case with some of these grants and programs that they'll have a round 1 or a round 2 or whatever. So it's good to be aware that they're out there, and just have the opportunity to prepare a grant, and even if you do miss one cut off, you can have a bit more time, I guess, to prepare it if there's any other rounds coming up. Okay, and then lastly, with the grants, there is differences between some of the grants out there. So it could be just a straight out grant where you'll receive an amount of money. Some of them require some co-funding for you to access it. And then there are some other schemes out there where you access carbon credits and you get, I guess, a discount on your project as a result of accessing the carbon credits. So let's get into this. So we'll start with the Australia-wide opportunities. As Amanda said, everyone will get a list of these slides. There's quite a big list here. So we ended up with about 70, there's about 70 slides in this pack. I'm only going to be able to get through about half of these, but yeah, you will get the full list and you can have a look at some of the innovation and productivity grants that are out there that might not specifically be energy related, but you know, there's quite a bit out there that you could think of. You might be looking at water improvements or whatever. So we'll kick off. So federally, so there's the energy efficient community grants, energy efficient community grant, which is on offer from the Department of Industry, Science, Energy and Resources. This one is a grant for equipment upgrades generally. It's for small businesses with a turnover of less than 10 million per year, or high energy using businesses which use over 0.05 petajoules per year. The funding amount is up to $20,000 with no co-contribution required. And for those businesses that are high energy users, they can apply for a grant of up to $25,000 with match funding. So, okay, so that's that one. So energy efficient communities grant. Another one that you may have heard of is this Sustainable Australia Fund loan. So this is quite an interesting one. So this one, it's currently available to participating councils in Victoria, New South Wales and South Australia. The way this one works is you receive 100% of the project finance for whatever the project is. So there's a lot of energy efficiency or HVAC system upgrades, lighting control upgrades, those kinds of projects are all eligible for this. And the repayments are made via the local council rates. So with this program, you can only access it if your local council is a participating council of the Sustainable Australia Fund. And Matt advised me yesterday that there's only actually a couple of councils in Victoria where there's meat processing plants that have access to this particular fund. Having said that, it's good to know that it's there. Potentially, if other councils sign up to this in the future, and it's in your region, then potentially you could be accessing this one and yeah, signing up to this scheme where you make the repayments via your council rates.
Yeah, Penny, just a comment on that one.
Yeah.
The Sustainable Australia Fund, the participating councils in Victoria are all, a lot of them are regional based, and so I think those councils cover approximately 1/3 of Victoria in the total size of Victoria. So for red meat processors in regional areas, there could be a number of red meat processors that qualify for that funding. And on the website that you put there is a search tool that helps people find out if their local council has signed up to that funding method. So Victoria will have the greatest opportunity for red meat processors, but Adelaide, South Australia and New South Wales is primarily based in the metropolitan location, so it's not really going to help red meat processors, but Victoria is definitely what we're looking at for red meat processors.
I guess I wonder if I just had the thought whether any of the companies might have head offices or offices in some of those metropolitan areas or not, and maybe they could, but it was just a thought that occurred just then, so it might not be relevant.
Yeah, there may be a few, yeah.
So, okay, so the next one here. So this is another loan. So this is the Clean Energy Finance Corporation, which has been around for quite a while, and you're probably already aware of this one. So this is for projects ranging from $10,000 through to $5 million, average investment of about $100,000. So to access this one, you're basically going direct to one of the big four banks And so it's an energy efficiency loan. So just an example there. So Wodonga Abattoir has been able to access this loan and put in a tri-generation plan. I don't know if we've got anyone from Wodonga listening in or not, but they might be able to tell us how that went. But, so they were able to access $4 million from this grant, and then coupled that with $1 million from a Regional Growth Fund Victoria grant, and another $1 million from another federal grant. Okay. Okay, the next one nationally that we'll talk about is the AMPC PIP funding. So I'm just going to throw that to you, Matt, to have to talk about.
Thanks, Penny. So at AMPC, we have two types of projects where we can provide funding for red meat processing members. One of our core projects, which are sectoral type projects, where the projects are based around opportunities for all members, and they usually involve an expression of interest, and sometimes that the selection of the participating plants is on a competitive basis. So the ability for plants to be involved in a core project is not guaranteed because it's a competitive type application. The same as some of those state-based grants are also competitive. And then the other type of project funding we have is for plant-initiated projects, where members can bring to us a project, energy efficiency, or a water project, or a waste project. It doesn't have to be, or it could be any program areas, where the members identified something they want to do, which they see is a bit different, a bit novel. Maybe it's an existing technology, but it's a different application, or maybe it's a new process. And so they can come to us and show us the project and ask for funding. And that funding is almost assured, provided there's a methodology and there's some learnings available to the wider sector, the industry. So it's not a competitive process. It's just based on the methodology for the project. But it's also based on the member putting in 25% of their own cash towards the total cost of the project. And the other 75% can be funded 50% by the Commonwealth, and 25% via the PIP balance that the member already has available to them from contribution of their levies. So it's for the PIP projects, it's a 25% cash contribution. And as I say, they just need to give us an idea of what it's about, and so we can assess the learning for the sector and the level of novelty about it, and the methodology regarding the project. Thanks, Penny.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Okay, the next on the list that you may or may not be aware of is the Australian Tax Office Instant Asset Write-Off. So this is for companies that have less than 500 million turnover, which should cover a lot of the meat processors. So it's a threshold amount for each asset for up to $150,000. They extended the time just in the last day or two, so the asset must be purchased between the 12th of March and the 31st of December this year. Up until, I think, even yesterday, it was the end of January. And then after the end of this year, it will go back to being only available for small businesses with lower turnover of less than 10 million. So that's quite a good one to try to access. And now that you've got another 6 months to be thinking about what equipment you could be purchasing, there's a bit more time there, it's a bit more breathing space, so that's good. Okay, the next one that we have here is the Emission Reduction Fund. So this particular one is run by the Clean Energy Regulator. it's now been rebranded as the Climate Solutions Fund, and it's quite a complicated one, this one. I'm not actually sure if any meat processors have been able to access. Having said that, yeah, there is one or two, I think, that that access this through and put in place some biogas projects. But the way this one works is it's run by a reverse auction, and as a result of the project, carbon credits are generated, and this is where some of the, the contribution towards the project is made through the generation of the carbon credits. You could have a whole webinar on this particular fund itself, so we thought we would not sort of try to cover this in too much detail. And the other thing is, it's some of the details around this are currently being modified. So again, it's good to know that it's there and to have a look at the web link in the coming weeks, just to see what the changes are and whether it's easier to access, I think, is the key with this one. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Matt, or we just leave it at that.
Hang on. Yes.
Sorry, I might have put you on.
I think it's a bit.
Yeah.
No, that's fine. I think it's a bit of watch this space for the Climate Solutions Fund.
Yeah.
There was a review known as the King Review, which looked at the funding mechanisms for the federal government around clean energy, and the Climate Solutions Fund has had recommendations for further methodologies, and some of those may be applicable to red meat processors. It's not exactly clear yet, so it's a bit hard to, as you say, to provide a lot of detail on it right now, but I'm sure there'll be plenty of dissection of that, the new Climate Solutions Fund, as it becomes clear about the new methodologies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so on to South Australian programs, and I'm just looking at the time here. So we'll see how we go with some of the grants that we can cover here. I think we've got a few people from South Australia listening, don't we? So we will talk about some of these. So the Resource Efficiency and Productivity REAP grants, these ones have been around for a little while. So there's funding there to do a resource efficiency and productivity assessment to a maximum of $10,000, and it's 50% subsidised. And just with this one, so there's Macro Meats and Thomas Foods have started off with this grant, I believe, and then use some of the results from their assessment to go on and attract funding for some bigger projects. So Macro Meats there is a trade waste treatment upgrade, and similarly for Thomas Foods. So just for some, a basic energy assessment, and if you're in South Australia, potentially you could be accessing this. The next one, which again has been around for a while, is the Retailer Energy Efficiency Scheme. So this one is a carbon credit scheme where you use a dedicated retailer, so they've got to be on the list, and you can be doing the sort of fairly simple projects, so things like lighting upgrades, ceiling insulation, that's another energy related one, standby power controllers, those kinds of things. So you do the upgrade, you access carbon credits, and that allows sort of a reduction in what the project would normally cost. Okay, this next one is quite an interesting one as well. So this is the Industry and Business Group's LEAP grants, which is the acronym for Lead, Educate, Assist and Promote. It's for probably groups of businesses and association, so probably potentially this is of more interest to AMPC rather than an individual process. But having said that, perhaps if a group of processors got together, they might be able to access this one. And this is funding for up to $50,000 for resource efficiency, which includes energy. Okay, so the Regional Growth Fund 2020 to 2021 and this has a strategic business round, which is a grant. So these are grants of up to $5 million, and the strategic business round are grants between $50,000 up to $2 million. And with these ones, they're looking at power infrastructure. So if you were looking at a bigger biogas, bio-waste, and potentially a solar and I'm not sure about batteries, it's probably in there, solar project. This is something, and again, if you're in South Australia, this is something that you could potentially access. So Thomas Foods was successful in accessing this particular grant. New South Wales programs. So this is co-funding for manufacturers. So this is one that you can receive funding of up to $50,000 per site to install or upgrade energy metering and monitoring systems, up to $70,000 per site for energy efficiency equipment. And it's a co-contribution of 50% with this particular one. Also, if the project is more than over $40,000, it requires measurement and verification to happen on top of that. The cutoff for this is pretty soon. So it was, I think, early July. I think it was 10th of July, actually. It's now been extended to the 10th of August. So, yeah, if you're in New South Wales, if you've got a project that is ready to go and you can get yourself organised by the 10th of August, then have a look. You're probably already aware of it if you're in that situation, I'm thinking. But the next one, the business energy coaching. So there's quite a lot happening in New South Wales with respect to energy efficiency. With this one, you can get coaching. So large energy users will fund up to $35,000 for coaching and an energy plan. Okay. Again, New South Wales has a lot of information just on energy generally. So there's various courses and things that you can access, and there's a link there for those. This one here, now where's the cutoff date? Okay, so this cutoff date, so this is the compressed air and steam system review grant. Cutoff date is coming up quickly. So they've said 3rd of July or until funding is exhausted. It doesn't look like this one's going to be extended, I think. We've put this on the list because potentially you could be getting a review of your steam trap systems or compressed air systems. If this looks of interest, act quickly. The same with this one. So it's a compressed air metering offer. So putting metering systems on your compressed air. They'll cover 30% of the costs up to $5,000. So yeah, this one's closing on the 3rd of July as well. So if you were interested in that one, you'd have to act pretty quickly as well. And then we have the New South Wales Energy Savings Scheme. So this is similar to the South Australian scheme where you do an energy efficiency upgrade. You receive carbon credits as a result of doing that upgrade, and then that's where the reduction in the overall project costs comes. So this covers quite a lot of different equipment upgrades, lighting, HVAC, compressed air, hot water and steam. So that's quite a good one to have a look at, and it's an ongoing one. Victorian programs. So we have the Victorian Energy Upgrades Program. So it's a similar program to the New South Wales and South Australian ones, where you're generating the carbon credits. So we have custom upgrade grants to the value of 25,000. Oh, sorry, no longer available. Is that right? Okay. This one again, sorry.
Is that the Victorian Energy Efficiency Certificate? Yeah.
That's right, yeah.
The VICs, just as an example of that, we are doing a PIP right now, which is for a retrofit of an energy efficiency item to a industrial refrigeration compressor system. And so the PIP is funding 75% of the cost. And then the VIC will come in at the end and rebate or pay back the customer contribution, almost all of it. So that's an example where we've been able to combine our own PIP with a state-based program. That's not a competitive program, obviously, that's the methodology-based program. And so that, yes, we can work together with some of the state-based grants, so that if it's a PIP, it might end up being PIP plus state-based grant, almost 100, or virtually 100% of cost. So that's an interesting thing.
Okay, thank you. Right, the next one is the Boost Your Business Advanced Manufacturing Voucher Program. So contribution of up to 50,000 of project costs. There's 2 rounds per year with this one through Business Victoria. Here's another one to think about. Sorry, I'm just having a read of what we have. Probably with respect to energy, yeah, you might have to be a bit creative, I think, to access this one with respect to energy. But having said that, business capability services to assist companies to position them to support future growth. If you were looking at perhaps energy monitoring systems or something like that, potentially you could be accessing this one. And it's 2 rounds per year, so there's no sort of great rush to be getting something in with this one. Again, this is another Business Victoria one, 2 rounds per year. This one is more focused towards early stage feasibility and testing of processes or products. Or so. Okay, Queensland. Well, Queensland's, there's not a lot currently open, but we still thought we would present what is out there in case they do decide that they're going to have another round, which is quite possible considering we've got an election coming up later in the year. You never know what's going to come up in the next couple of months with respect to that. So there's a business growth fund here with funding up to $50,000 for the purchase and the implementation of specialised equipment or services. So advanced manufacturing or digital equipment and systems. So possibly, again, if you're looking at something like an energy management system, it could qualify for that with respect to advanced manufacturing. The Energy Savers Program, so this is Queensland Farmers Federation. Again, this is closed, but I just wanted to mention it because they've got a really excellent website there. We can see the link there in front of you with a lot of case studies and some pretty good information on different tariffs. There's changes in tariffs that are happening up here in Queensland, which I won't go into now, but this website talks about what those changes are and what can be done to try to reduce costs for regional Queenslanders. And then we have, for Advanced Queensland, the Business Development Fund. Again, trying to get an energy-related project through this one, you would have to be a little bit creative, I think. But I did want to put it up there because it was one of the only ones that are currently open in Queensland. So we'll move on. WA program. Sorry.
Penny, I was just going to mention on
Yes.
the Queensland one, we've done some funding in the past with in tandem with the Queensland Regional Development Fund, where their primary goal is for employment outcomes, and so we've been involved in PIPs where we've provided a PIP, and the Queensland Regional Development Fund has provided their funding, so it bulks up the amount of funding for the client, and as long as they have an employment outcome, and from our side of things we have an efficiency outcome, and we can do it together. So the other thing with that business development fund you were talking about, where the Queensland State Government becomes a co-investor in a company, obviously may not apply to a processor's core business, but it might apply to a secondary business. For example, if a processor was thinking of opening a second protein recovery plant, and they were perhaps looking to aggregate protein recovery from other waste streams in other manufacturing businesses, and it was a secondary business to their core business, then that could be a good fund to use for those sort of things. So it might be relevant for perhaps the really, or the growing processes or the bigger processes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. WA. Do we have anyone from WA on the webinar? Do we know? So I'm wondering whether we skip through these ones.
Yes, we do. Sorry, Penny. Yes, we do have a couple of people from WA on the webinar.
Okay. All right. So I'll quickly cover a couple of these, and then I might just go through to the tips for grant writing, just looking at the time. And yeah, again, everyone will get the full list of these slides, so you can go through and have a look at what is there. So, so WA, they've got the Value Add Agribusiness Investment Attraction Fund, which is round 2 is currently closed. There could be future rounds for this one. So agri-food technology investment of up to $100,000 for tech that reduces input costs and environmental impact. So there is that's the energy related aspect to that one, and it's dollar for dollar funding, match funding. The agri-food and beverage voucher program, again, the current round is closed, but there's likely to be future rounds for that one. This is for SMEs with a turnover of 200,000 to 50, I can't see the size there, I think it's 50 million for regional businesses. Again, with this one, quality assurance, technology and digital advisory. So trying to relate that back to energy, I often just go back to energy management systems, could fall under this banner, or even just upgrades to control systems within your refrigeration plant could potentially fall under this banner. All right. Sorry to any people from Tasmania that might be listening. We might skip through these because we're running a bit short on time. Same with Northern Territory. Poor Tasmanians and Northern Territorians always miss out, don't they? Okay, so quickly, just a few tips on grant writing. And probably the number one thing, which, I've put it in there 4 times, is to start early. Just from personal experience, you know, many a times we've tried to put in applications for grants, and if you leave your run too late, there's always things that pop up, bits of information that you need that might take a few days to actually get hold of. And so number 1 tip is to start early with your grant writing. If you're not successful the first time, just keep trying. You could be refining your application, getting it out in front of people as well, as often as possible. Obviously, you need to be meeting the eligibility criteria. But yeah, apply early and apply often. Understand what the purpose of the grant is and trying to meet the criteria, and not, you know, it can be tempting to sort of bend things around to match what you're actually wanting the funding for, but you need to create a story that fits in with what the agency is actually trying to give funding to. So yeah, there can be a bit of creative writing required for some of these grants to sell the story, I guess, and make it fit in with, you know, what it is that they're trying to give money for. Be explicit and specific, so keep it simple, easy to understand. It's good to have a few people working on these grants, and it's good to show it to someone that might not be closely connected to the particular project that you're working on, because if it makes sense to someone that's not fully up on the project, you know, you need that. If you could be getting your grant application in front of someone that just has no idea about what goes on in a meat processing plant, and it has to make sense to them. So that's another tip there. Make sure you address all the selection criteria, which can be a bit painstaking, but very important. And yeah, support any claims you have with evidence. It can be tempting to exaggerate savings or those kinds of things, but you need to be backing that up with evidence. Yeah, again, this sort of goes back to what I was saying before about starting early. So you might need to show, demonstrate what energy savings there might be with your project. So you might need a bit of time to get that information together, and you may need, you know, some outside help to do that. So have more than one person read the application, and even set up a grant writing team. So Matt, I think I'll, we're sort of on to 45 minutes now, so I think I might leave it at that, because I haven't kept an eye on what questions have come up, but I'm not sure if there are any or not.
There was one comment from Taz at Wodonga, who mentioned about, we talked about that CEFC loan before.
Yes.
Yeah, and he mentioned that well, that was several years ago. They got a fixed rate, was pretty good for 7 years. So they're just about to pay it out. So well done. But
Excellent.
I think that reminds me that now is a really good time to look for fixed interest rates on the longer terms, because the yield curve on, you know, for funding is so flat and funding is so cheap. So that reminds me that the Sustainable Australia Fund, for example, is one of those types of funds which is very competitive, because they're not-for-profit, and they can write up to 20-year terms fixed at fixed rates, which is bound to be a good result. If you want to compare it over the last 100 years, that's got to be a good result currently, the way interest rates are so low. So we're always looking, you know, with our PIP funding, sometimes we're not we're not able to fund the capital equipment. If it's a big purchase of a capital equipment item, and we're funding some research and we're funding some application fees and we're funding other soft costs, the member still has to come up with the funding for the hard cost or the capital. And so we're often pointing members in the right direction, or giving them options, or giving them people to speak to who can look at the longer term finance type deals on a fixed rate, because then they know what their costs are. Their costs are locked in for the medium term, and some of them on the longer terms can become cash flow positive from day one, which is also attractive. So and I know you guys, Penny, at Eco Efficiency Group do the grant writing, and you're obviously talking to different types of funders at different stages. So you would also be a good port of call for members, if they're looking for the funding for the capital, the large capital items, because it's these days there are a number of options around, but it's a matter of knowing which are the real ones and which are the pretenders, so to speak. So we can definitely provide, as you can, and we can provide some guidance around which are the performers as far as that funding is concerned.
Yeah. And and having it's good if you can apply for a loan or a grant and say that, look, we've got another group here that's also investing in this project, and we're wanting to add value or whatever, and build on whatever, you might have an initial piece of investment and you're building on that, because that it makes for a stronger application as well if you're able to do that.
Yeah, exactly. And picking up on the when you were talking about the those state-based grants that are competitive, not just based on okay, what's the project about. They really want to weigh them up against other applications, and they choose the competitive ones. Have you got any guidance around what they need to focus on when they're applying for a competitive grant? What are some of the things they should focus on other than the project itself?
I think, I suppose it just goes back to some of those tips, and really thinking about who it is that's putting the grant out there, and what targets are they, well, maybe not targets, but what is it that they're trying to achieve? And, it could be all related to some government policy or targets or whatever. So if you can create a story that shows, how your project is ultimately feeding in and meeting what they're trying to achieve, then it can be a bit more effective.
And I'd agree, and I'd add to that perhaps some of those state-based, particularly the ones you pointed out in Queensland, for example. I mean, that if anyone's applying for those when they're open, then they'll need to think, okay, these applications might need to show some benefit to the regional community where I'm located, be it upskilling of employees, or additional employees, or capacity building in a regional location. And sometimes the state-based grants, not all of them, but some of them can need some information around the co-benefits like that. That give them a better weighting when it's a competitive type application.
Yeah.
And I suppose another thing, it might be difficult to show, but if you could show that you're generating jobs from whatever your project is, especially if it's something like a biogas plant where you're going to need operators and people
construction workers to actually build it. If you can show that you're generating jobs in a region, then there's some pretty big points for that as well. So,
yeah, just some other questions there, Penny, that came through towards the end. There was a question on any information around ARENA, and which I know ARENA, yeah, which I know is not easy, hasn't been easy to answer recently because of the uncertainty around their funding going forward. But have you got any comments around that?
No, only to say that with ARENA funding, it's got to be, you know, something that's innovative and new, and yeah, it can be difficult with ARENA funding for just a straight, you know, energy efficiency upgrade project, and even biogas installations now, they're pretty you know, they're not uncommon, I guess. So even trying to get funding through ARENA for something like biogas would be, I think it'd be a bit surprising. So yeah.
Yeah, it is exactly, because a couple of years ago, ARENA did a good, some good funding for Southern Meats in, is it Mittagong, I think, for a cogen unit off the waste, the covered anaerobic lagoon, and but that was a couple of years ago now, and that was a good result for that member who was looking to prove some technology. But I think now, a couple of years later, it's not as likely to get, ARENA's probably not as likely to tick off on something like that, because there's been a number of projects that have proven cogeneration when in combination with biogas production. So that may be more difficult, for example, these days. And they're looking for perhaps proving technology applications in Australia that may have started in Europe, for example, like you know, heat pumps, CO2 heat pumps, and those sort of technologies that are, you know, that are yet to be really proven, particularly in our sector.
Yeah.
ARENA is funding some feasibilities in that area, but at this stage, they're trying to find the best situation to invest in demonstration for heat pump applications. That's why they've been funding a bunch of feasibilities, and some of our members have been involved in that. And another question, which is for you probably offline, Penny. Vickers from NH Foods has asked about the Queensland Business Development Fund. So maybe we can put you in touch with Vickers, and because he's asking for more information on that. And
sure.
so thanks for that question, Vickers.
Okay.
That's the last one I've got there.
Okay.
Question, yeah.
Great, thanks Penny and Matt. No more questions have come through, so I think we'll wrap the webinar up. As we've sort of said through the webinar, and I've had quite a few questions coming through, we will definitely make these slides available to everyone that is registered, as well as a copy of the link to the actual presentation that's been recorded. So I'll get those to you within the next 24 hours. And if you've got any further questions, please feel free to get in touch with Penny or Matt directly, and I'm sure they'll be able to point you in the right direction. Just as we conclude, we will have a survey at the end. I just ask if you could take the time to complete the survey, because that will help us to deliver these webinars and keep building on the series that we've got. So very keen to hear what else and other ideas and topics that you would like to speak about. So once again, thank you very much, Penny, and we will conclude the webinar.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Penny. Thanks, Amanda. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.